And now we bring you Gavin Friday and Greg Fasolino having a conversation. I guess the first thing I was curious how you found it working as a solo artist. Like, is it different for you, or are you enjoying it?
Compared to the Virgin Bruins?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just shut this door. Hoping that you can hear the noise, sir.
Or actually, just being involved again with making music and being in the public eye.
Yeah, it was weird, sort of the Prunes, the last 2 years of the Prunes were quite intense and sad and weird, simply because, like most great things, elements of the spontaneity were beginning to wear out, especially in the live aspect. I found certain things that we
Thank you.
certain things that we set up to break down, like visually what the Prunes are about and sexually what the Prunes are about, was very sort of honest and real. And say, just from a frivolous aspect, something of the way myself and Boogie used to dress became a cliche, in that when people just wanted to see us go through this ritual on stage, and people started coming up dressed like us, and that just wasn't what we set out to do. And like all things, it was formed out of energy and all this thing, and it became a little sort of stagnant, and it was like really hard to sort of move in a direction, because other members of the band, everyone started sort of going, people wanted to sort of like have babies and things, which is usually happens to most people when they hit 25.
Yeah.
It didn't happen to me, but so when I ended that, I was really freaked out, because it was like really important in my life, and I was like, that's it, I'm not going to get involved with music. And that was around sort of like late 85, 86.
Right.
All this sort of cancer started setting in. And I have no regrets about the Prunes. I'm really proud of what we did, and it was a really honest expression. The only regret I have was that I didn't sort of end it about 6 months earlier. That's the only thing. But anyway, we live and learn. And after the Prunes, Cookie's still my best friend. I still hang out with him. And we always had a love for art and painting. And I was like really flipped out. I didn't know where I was. It was like, I couldn't cope with the band ending. And he was like flipped out. So we started painting together. And I found that very sort of therapeutic, and it was really self-disciplining, because there was like me and the canvas and painting, and there was no one else, and if I fucked up, I fucked up.
Right.
And we had great times, and we really did something. But it was then I started, I said, I'm not getting involved in any of the musical projects or anything, I'm not going to. But it was after I did this year of painting and I did an exhibition, I realised that what I loved more than anything was writing and performing and singing. So I started going out again. I started a little club, and yeah, it's very different. But I made a decision when I started not to form a band. That was a definite decision, because I wanted to work with many different people. I wanted to be able to have the freedom to move into any area I wanted.
Right.
Whether it's whatever, I'm working with the man Caesar. He sort of collaborates with me musically. I had all these lyrics and these musical ideas, and I worked with him, and he's great. It's wonderful. But I've also worked with a lot of New York musicians, and the next time I don't know, I might work with God knows who. But I want that freedom, and it was on those terms. I sort of laid my terms down in my head, what I wanted to do, and yeah, it's exciting. I feel a lot older when I started off in the Prunes, I've learned a lot, but I'm still excited.
It's good to know what happened exactly, because a lot of your fans here weren't quite sure exactly what happened with the end of the prunes and everything.
Well, we were never into sort of like explain. We didn't feel we had to explain anything. I mean, Strongman and Mary weren't too happy about the end of the band.
Was just one curious thing I wanted to know. Was that live album? Did you approve of that?
No, I didn't want that.
Because I remember reading once that you said you didn't want to ever do a
That's
live
why I
record.
wouldn't have anything to do with it. And they put this stupid fucking picture of me and horrible. And they said they mixed it and all. That was horrible. It wasn't even a great gig. I really objected to that, and that's when I really fell out with Strongman and Mary. And then they did something called the Prunes, and I don't understand. I mean, Virgin Prunes. How can you have the Virgin Prunes without me and Googie? It just
That's
didn't.
kind of ridiculous.
It didn't make sense to me. I don't really like what they're doing, and I object to the live album. I never wanted to release a live album with the Virgin Prunes. We did a live tape way back called Inglorious, but that was a performance where no one sang. It was just sort of a noise thing.
Right.
But it's horrible. For me,
Yeah.
it's like torture, you know.
Do you see any of the, as the last thing on the end of that, do you see any of the ideas that you really expound on this album as any kind of continuation of things you might have started to dabble in on the last Prunes album?
Well, the last Prunes album was this very strange album in the making of. I found that I was moving into areas personally that the rest of the band didn't get and didn't really go for. And I really wanted to start working with strings and getting into sort of surreal elements of romanticism and things. And the rest of the band wanted to be more of a rock band, you know, Strongman and Mary. And that wasn't me. So there was seeds sown, and there was some sort of lyrical ideas that have been floating around in my idea. Like the lyrics of Dazzle and Delight have been going around a long time, like 3-4 years. And I never sort of got it together musically. Yeah, and there's certain elements and aspects of Each Man Kills the Thing He Loves that are that have been said in a different way in the Prunes. But it's the same guy. I did most of the singing and wrote most of the lyrics in the Prunes. A lot of the, not being sort of egotistic or anything, a lot of the driving force energy was from me.
Yeah, definitely. Between the time that was going on and you hooked up with Man Caesar, how did that record you made, the cover of Can't Always Get What You Want, fit time-wise? Because I was one of the lucky people here to actually be able to find a copy that year because of that strange import law where they weren't allowed to bring it, but
bullshit.
found it in one record shop here, and I was just wondering like how that fit in time-wise in there.
That really didn't really fit in. After I painted, basically after the Prunes, me and Googie painted seriously for a year. And Googie still paints. He's done another 2 exhibitions. We did one together, and he's taking that very serious. He's no tall desire to get involved in music. But at that time, I started like after about 6-7 months of painting, I started getting itchy feet to perform again.
Right.
But I didn't want any complications, so I started a club called the Blue Jesus.
Right.
And that was like, I took over this place on a Friday night and turned it into my place. I had all these slide projectors from George Gross, who's an artist in the 30s. Fat fuck people and prostitutes and all this, and we played our own music. I wouldn't allow any electric music into the place. And at that time I met up with the Man Caesar, and during that time I was like, I used to just hang out. I used to get pissed drunk, and everyone used to come down the club. And a guy used to come down the club who's a friend called Simon Carmody, and he used to just get up and hang out. And he's in a trash band called the Golden Horde. No real trash. And I don't really go for a lot of the music, but I love him. He's a great guy. He's a great heart and a great spirit. And one night we were just pissed drunk, and he was in doing some session with the Golden Horde, and he says, "Come on in." and they were doing this Rolling Stones shit, and I never liked the Rolling Stones much, but so I said, let's fuck it up. So it was just like that. It was just like a drunken night, and we just did this, and then it felt okay. And
I actually like the B-side better.
yeah, Blessings. Yeah.
And I love the version of Wild Man of Time.
Yeah.
That actually I found very moving.
Yeah. We did that just live when we rehearsed. It was like 4 in the morning when we were all sobering up. It was just like a drunken Friday night in Dublin or something. You know, it wasn't anything exceptional or worked out. I did it for fun. A few things I did for fun. I'm sorry, no cigarettes left.
No thanks.
So it was then, like in the midst of the madness of the Blue Jays, that I had all these musical ideas and I had some music worked out and lyrics and all these feelings, and I wanted to work with somebody that came from an area that I felt was would be inspiring away from rock and roll or that, or anyone that sort of had ideas that they wanted to be the new Keith Levine or the new Tom Verlaine or the new Jesus and Mary Chain or something.
Yeah.
And I was getting into sort of older music, like music from Brel and Kurt Weill and Edith Piaf. So I started looking at classical players. I wanted to meet somebody that classically knew music and didn't really give a fuck or know who Johnny Lydon was or who REM were or who, you know, somebody who wasn't really involved in music. And I met up with the man Caesar, and he was like classically trained in cello and piano, went to college, studied theology, and got really frustrated with classical people because he felt them like machines. They learnt their instruments, their cellos and the pianos, and they hadn't really got a form of expression. And he was bored at the other end. So I met up with him and I brought him around to the club, and he loved it. And then he started playing with me, and we just had a great time. And I was giving him all these tapes of different music he's never heard, and it just clicked. And we said, let's try writing together. I had all these musical ideas that I needed sort of him to work with me, to sort of bring them into certain areas, and we started working, and that's how we got together.
The sound of the album is very refreshing, because it just really doesn't sound like anything that's coming out right now. But one thing I really noticed about it was that, I mean, obviously, but it really gives you a chance to use your voice a lot more than ever before. Like, how do you see your evolution as a singer?
I don't think any. In the Virgin Prunes was very, when Prunes started, it was very much the whole emotive thing was more important than anything. It was almost like primal scream in some elements, like especially New Form of Beauty and the early singles.
I was listening to that yesterday, and it is. It affects you more emotionally than
and it's like getting that out. And usually when you're younger, you're a lot more inarticulate. I mean, I'm not that old, but I was 17 when I started the Prunes. I was quite young and quite crazy. And you sort of like, and then you sort of learn how to say the same thing in a different way, and you move on, and you get older, actually, that's what it's called. And I don't know, I've always loved singing, and I never really took my voice seriously. I never really examined it. But then when I was listening to music like Jacques Brel and Kurt Weill, I said, Jesus, you really got it. Like, this is expression through voice in a different way. So I just started going for it differently and taking a lot more care on my lyrics. And this is like the first record where I've really sang. So I don't know. It's the type of voice people either like or hate, you know.
Yeah, I think so. Once you like it, though, it's really something you develop a real taste for. I know a lot of people who've been influenced by you here, who just, you know, really listen to your voice. And I think this album especially is something that they'll really get into.
Well, for me, the voice is always the most, you can't affect it. Like, you can't duplicate it. It's a unique thing. It comes from a person. It doesn't come from an instrument. So it's a powerful medium. Excuse me. Sorry.
Oops.
It's all wet shit. There you go. That's cool.
I'm sorry.
No, it's good.
The album is pretty long. I was wondering, like, was that I mean, I like that, but was that a thing that you deliberately wanted to do? Is have like a lot of material, have a really lengthy kind of album? Because it has a kind of an epic scope, and when you listen to it all at once, it's really...
Yeah, it's like two albums side one. It's like two separate albums. Yeah, I mean, we sort of wrote the stuff and had this idea, and I sort of don't give a shit if people say 40 minutes on an album should be. An album is what you want to get across, and I see albums like movies or like books, and I had all that to get across, and I don't care if it lasted 63 minutes, or 53, or 40 minutes, if the next record lasts 40 minutes, or 20 minutes if you just do an EP. You got to say what you got to say. And people are too conditioned to cliches. Like, you got to drop 2 tracks. I said, no. So I wouldn't drop 2 tracks. And I hate this shit where they put 3 tracks on the CD, and anyone who buys the LP and the cassette doesn't get them. I think it's a rip-off. CDs are more expensive. You should get more tracks on your album, if anything. Do you know what I mean? So, no, that was the way I saw it, and that's the way it was going to be. I mean, you don't exactly know how long a record's going to be until you finish mixing it, but I knew it was going to be long, and if you like it or leave it.
Yeah. Getting into like a theme, one theme that I always seem to find in your work and in the new album, it's amplified even more, is you really examine love a lot. And I was wondering, like, how you thought yourself of like how you've examined that, because I mean, it seems you've got a lot of songs, even just with Love in the title, where they talk about it. You know, the new album, you know, love is just a word, you know, stuff like that. How do you look at that in terms of what you've done? You know, like,
I don't really look at it. I just do it. I find that a lot of the album is trying to come to terms with what love is.
Yeah.
A lot of the album is very sort of coming from an angle like, say, Apologia or Take Away the Sun or something like that. Is coming from what is love. We fuck each other up. I hurt people. They hurt me in relationships. It's trying to come to terms with that. And I'm sort of amazed, bewildered, awed, confused, all these things by this thing that we call love, and emotions, and relationships, and the way we hurt each other, and the way we give to each other. And it's just my thing. I'm trying to come to terms with that, and the whole album, anything I've ever done is always the world according to me, what I've been going through, what I see, what annoys me, what freaks me out, what makes me angry. And ultimately the thing that affects us most is our relationships. They really, and our friends and the people around us and the people that hate us. They're the things that really move us in different directions. I'm just trying to get a cap on it all. You know? I don't know, I'm living and learning, I suppose, trying my hand at things, but I don't know, that's just what I was going through. You know, now it's a very in album, it's very sensitive in elements, it's very honest. The next record I could feel, I was at a very low, after the Prunes ended, and I felt very shattered, and I had to build myself back up, and I was very sort of sensitive and a little sort of inhibited about certain things, and I was getting sort of like, wow, this is heavy what I'm seeing around me, and what I'm feeling. I feel a lot stronger now, once I've got that out of my system, and I can see myself looking around a lot more outward at things. So the next record, I started writing stuff recently, won't be really each one because it's in Love's Part 2. It's going to go in a totally different direction, which will probably confuse everyone again. But
That's
I don't
great
know.
though. I mean, you've always done that. I really enjoy that. Because It never gets stale that way.
No, I can't do that. You see, I can't, like, if I achieve something, it's just like go there and then into something else. It's just my instinct, you know. I'm very illogical.
I really wanted to know what you thought of the book that was put out.
Ralph Fasolino's book.
Yeah, because I bought that. I mean, I liked your music a lot before, but it was when I bought that book 3 years ago. Something in that book just really clicked with me, and I went back and I listened to all the records again. And since then, I really seem to reread the book every year, and I just find something new in it to relate to. I mean,
It's a strange book. I mean, Ralph was a very intelligent and very intense man. He became slightly obsessed with the Virgin Burns in a way. He's a very honest man. Elements of the book, I did those interviews very blatantly. I didn't know the man that well, and I was going through a sort of a weird phase. It's like about the year or so before the band started disintegrating, and I feel that I was very sort of angry and confused and things at the time. And there was elements lost in it where he's Swiss German. Mm-hmm. And he speaks okay English, but a lot of it got sort of weird. If you read some of it, it sounds a bit weird. Yeah. That's simply because the translation thing. He didn't really understand what I was saying sometimes, because the way English and Irish and American people talk English, they sort of talk quick and they have their slang and their idioms. He didn't really get it. But the book in 84, 85, that's when I did a lot of those interviews, and he used to just send me these things. What do you think of this? And I just, right off the top of my head, and send it away. Wouldn't work it out. There was no big sort of manipulative thing. He just asked these questions. Said, "Do what you want?" Gave me these. He says, "Give me some pictures." Gave him pictures. He said, sent these pages in the post. Says, "What do you think of art?" And I just start drawing shit and writing shit. And just off the top, post it, and I never thought he'd get it together. I never actually. He was saying he was putting this, and I liked him, and there was a strong vibe off him. He was a strong man, very cynical man, very hard man, but very honest. Really liked his honesty, and I was really shocked when he put it out. You know that he did it, and I really respect the guy. He's done another book since.
Judas.
Yeah.
I haven't read that yet.
Yeah, it's okay. It's sort of like 10, 12 different guys. I wrote a bit for it, but I just sort of I don't see myself as a writer on that level. So I just sort of treated it like it was an improvised concert. You know, so there's elements of that's what Gavin Friday was going through certain times in 84, 85, and what the band were doing then. Some of it, like, I contradict the shit out of myself sometimes, but that's life. That's what we all do. That's how I thought then, and I changed my mind now. But that's what we're about.
There was one thing in it that really caught me, and when I listened to the new album, I think of it too. Like you said something in the beginning about you were doing a thing like head versus heart, and how a lot of what you do just comes out of your emotion and experience, like your feelings, rather than like as a cerebral kind of thing. And listening to the new album too, I feel like a lot of the stuff is just coming out without a lot of you judging the material. It just seems to come out almost unadulterated. Is that something you would agree with? Or?
Yeah, it's something I think is very important, because I think expression is far more articulate for who we are than logic. I really dislike logic. I'm very illogical, but then again there's elements of me that is logical, I suppose, in my makeup, but I think the true thing is, like, you know, trying to get a feeling across, and that's what music has always been to me. It should be, and art and writing, it should be to try and get a feeling that this is what I'm going through, this is what I see, not how I think about it. This is what I see and what I'm going through, and it's trying to articulate that in an emotive way, and that's always been my big thing.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know, because I don't have I don't believe in telling people what to think and do. It's up to them. I just say this is me, how I see things, and it's very important for me. I think if I ever became too contrived, or I felt I had to work everything out logically, I think I'd just give up. I wouldn't bother. I'd go to painting or something. I'd stop singing. So spontaneity is really important.
Do you find it easier to translate your ideas in this kind of way, just like coming out of you through like a more piano and voice oriented mode like that you're doing now? It seems like that might be something easier for you to like.
It is
get
easier in
across
some
what you're trying
levels.
to do.
I mean, like I felt what I'm doing now. I don't know the next time. What it depends where I go to, what level I want to get onto. Yeah, I mean, it's very easy medium for me. I'm into dynamics and expression, and I love sort of quite over the top at times.
It's a very romantic album. Very, I don't know. You just listen to it and it
But
inspires you.
there's so little sensitivity today, and there's so little romance. I mean, I'm like an old-fashioned weirdo, if you know what I mean. I'm not into the sort of crooning Frank Sinatra syndrome. But
Right.
I am into sort of, I do believe in beauty and trying to understand that. But yeah, the piano is a great instrument. It's got a lot more sensitivity than a rock and roll guitar. But a rock and roll guitar can portray a lot of pain and angst as well. Like I love it. I just have never worked that much with a piano, and I found that very inspiring.
Right. I think a big question for me and for a lot of people who like the album would be, how do you plan on translating it like live? Like, do you plan on touring? Or,
Yes, I've already started touring.
I read that you did a tour of Ireland last year. Like, how did that go?
It was okay. Well, I wasn't too happy with that because I put a band together. The band I put together was for the album was with Mark Rebo and people like that, and they were great. They were wonderful. And then I sort of didn't want to work with these guys live because I was afraid of what I do on stage is so personalised. I didn't want names of other guys like, oh, he works with so and so. On the album you could control them. I didn't want this sort of like Gavin comes back with some sort of alternative mega band. Do you know what I mean? I didn't want it that hip. So I picked out these guys in Ireland to work with, and it didn't really work. So I changed around, but at the moment I've put together a band. I've got myself and the man Caesar, and I found these two incredible women. One's called Julia Palmer, and she plays cello, and another one's Sarah Homer, and she plays bass, clarinet, bass clarinet, accordion, tin whistles, drums, but like little drums, and they're incredible. And I've just done 3 weeks in England and a week in Ireland recently. I did 2 weeks in Europe, and I'm going back next week to do 4 weeks in Europe. And I'm coming here to play some concerts the end of October.
Oh, great!
I'm playing. I don't know where, but I'm playing New York, Boston, Chicago, Philadelphia, and then the West Coast, LA, San Francisco, and then Toronto and places in Canada. And it's going to be acoustic. It's not going to have any drums. It's very intimate, and I don't know how America's going to handle it, but I'm really happy with this. It's very intimate. It's very expressive, and it's going to like Europe, or like it's really happening in Europe for us. And time will tell. You'll see it in about 5-6 weeks. The show.
Do you think you'll concentrate then on like smaller, more ambient places rather than playing a larger place?
I don't know. I mean, like I'll probably this time. I want my introduction to Europe and to. I wanted my introduction to Europe and to England to be atmospheric, intimate, and direct. And I've done that, and I'm going to go back to Europe now and do it again, and I want that. So I'm talking about clubs that hold about 200, that's how I've been playing. Although in London I played bigger clubs because there's a big demand there. I played 600-700 places. But I want people sitting down. If I don't care where I play, but I'll bring chairs in and I'll make them fucking sit. You know?
Yeah.
Because I don't want this. The rhythms aren't like that. It starts off like this. And then it just goes back, hits you in the face and comes back. But Jesus,
It's a noisy
New York,
city.
yeah. And but that's only this phase. Once I've done that introduction, people sort of like sow my roots. It's like with the album. The second album is going to go into a different area. I'm going to come back. If I come back in January or February or in the spring, I'm going to probably bring in drums and guitar because I have to keep challenging myself. I have to keep bringing it. It's not like this is Gavin Friday's feel for the next year. I'm going to chop change. And it's great because I have the freedom now to go. I don't have the commitment of a band. Although I've been working with these two girls and they've been blowing my brain. This cello player, you won't believe her, she's sort of like Jimi Hendrix. You know, she's also, these are three all classically trained.
Wow, these are really impressive.
So you'll see it in a few weeks.
How about your performance per se? Like, you've really been known for being very theatrical. Like, how do you plan on? Do you have any kind of specific performance in mind for yourself personally?
Yeah, I mean, like I'm a performer naturally. Give me a stage and I get going. The prunes never really, me and Googie never really worked out our visuals. We talked about them and we went for it and we expressed the song. Cabaret as a sort of a little influence visually, and then bringing it into surreal territories. Do you know what I mean? So I'm using that. I'm sort of going through like, I've got a real fascination for sort of like the 30s and 40s and for Vegas. How corrupt and fucked that place is, you know. So I come out like attack, you know, and then I just get heavy, you know. I don't know, I like cliches, throwing them at people's face and making those cliches scare the shit out of you in different ways. I just found that like, you know, visually and that, I don't believe in sort of setting a routine. What I do now is going to be very different to what I did in 6 months probably, as I keep saying. But yeah, it's pretty visual, but that's the type of guy I am. I'm very, I become the songs when I get on the stage.
I noticed when you made the comment before about the city, I noticed you've always had interesting things to say about the cities. I was just wondering, like, do different cities affect you emotionally?
Oh yeah.
Is it a real, you know, like some people can just go to any city and feel at home, it doesn't really affect them, whereas other people it does.
I feel I have to be too together in this city, which freaks me out a bit. I mean, I come from a very small city. It's intense in another way. This city, I get excited by it, really, when I first come here. I go, Jesus, this is really exciting. And then I say, Jesus, this is fucked up jungle. You know, and it's that's what it is. It's, you drive across the Brooklyn Bridge and you see the most beautiful, modern sculptures in the world. You just see that shape, and it's just all this Manhattan is a beautiful island, visually. And then you get into it, it's a hellhole, it's a slut, it's just, you know, it's everything that's shit and sick about humanity and everything that's beautiful about modern man. It's hell and heaven in one fucking vomit. You know, it's really, I just think the architecture is brilliant. And I love the food. I love shit food. Stromboli pizzas. I hate the beer, and I find I find the people weird. Weird in that I find them emotionally very immature. I find that weird. I find a lot of people, you meet them and you go, wow, he's really together, smart guy, she's a smart woman, really has everything together. And then you sort of, afterwards, you talk about something, then you hang out and you go for a beer. And you find out she's a fucking imbecile. She's like a 4-year-old child. Oh God, I fell in love. I met this guy yesterday. Unbelievable. I'm so in love. And you go, this together woman, and she is together, you know. And then you see this emotionally so immature. Like, I think it's really weird when a country's. I mean, I come from a country which is really old and it's got a lot of culture and background, right? And Europe has a lot of history and a lot of background. And we got all these sort of like Celts, Druids, everything going back before Christ. Here, Hollywood. That's your history, man.
That's the farthest culture goes back.
Yeah, other than the Red Indians, but they got rid of them, you know. So it's like, what else do you expect? You know. And then you see people going around with the Bible in one hand and the Inquirer in the other. Wow, this is in Welcome to America. You know, it's that element. I think it's really honest. I think it's really honest. Man is fucked up and corrupt, and he grabs with one hand and pets with another. And that's what America. It's outright. It's outright. You see the 7 heads of the apocalypse. You see them all. One head's called 7-Eleven. The other one's called Jerry Lewis. The other one's called Bush. The other one's called, you know what I mean? You see all these guys, and it's really exciting because you know where you are. You see all that. Where in Ireland, you see a beautiful country, very simple, and the hate and the fucked upness is hidden. In England, it's really hidden. You know, it's really like we used to be the strongest country in the world. Now we're not. We just have this fascist leader. You see all these things. But at the end of the day, people are people, and it doesn't really matter. In this city, I just feel warm all the time. And I don't mean that just physically. I just feel, you know, it takes a lot out of me. But I've been running around like a blue arse fly, so I haven't really had time to hang out. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, I lived here when I recorded the album for 6 weeks, and I loved it. Yeah, even though when you're recording an album, we did it like in 14, 15 days, but we did like 2 weeks meeting people and working on musicians, and I did the album cover here in New York. I did it, you know, the Blue Willow up off Fulton Broadway. Mm-hmm. I did it in the back room there, and I hung out here for a few weeks, and it was great. Although I didn't really, I had a place in Brooklyn which I liked. It's a great city, and it's hell as well.
And I have a friend, Tommy, who's originally from Dublin, and I can see a lot of times on his reactions to things, like things that I take for granted about it shocks him or affects him differently.
We come from a different culture, you know. Really, it's a very manipulative culture here. But I mean, every country's got its weird things. You know, Ireland's pretty weird in other ways.
At the same time, too, New York City itself is very different sometimes from not only the rest of the country, but even just like for example, I live in Queens, which is kind of like a suburb, you know, here, and it's very different even coming into here for me. It's different from where I live at home. It's, you know, I feel.
But this is like it's like flies.
Yeah.
It's weird.
How do you feel towards the press these days? Because I used to get very irritated being, you know, somebody who, you know, I'm in the press only for a few years, but even before when I was a kid, and I used to read things, I used to get very irritated, especially the English press. Like, I'm a real hater of those. Like,
they hated
magazines.
the prunes.
I remember reading a thing of a prune show, I think in '85 or '84, they just were like, it was just like the stupidest review, and I wanted to strangle them because they just didn't understand. But like, do they still? I was curious. Do they still like kind of play up the surface aspects and don't really understand what you're
No,
trying to
in
do.
a weird way, I've got great British press
Really?
with this album, which
That's
I'd
good.
be suspicious of. Basically, I don't think they ever really got in Germany and France and Holland. They understood the prunes. In Europe, England never really tried to understand because everyone was going around wearing raincoats and pretending they were industrial doom and gloom and being Echo and the Bunnymen and all that shit. And we were like going like surrealists running around the place, and they couldn't cope with this, so they just said we were dickheads, And we were never really goth. The Bruins were never really goth. I mean, Bauhaus were goth, and the Mission are goth, and the Cure. The Bruins are far more diverse than that.
Yeah.
Music. You listen to an album of the Bruins, and you say that's goth. No, it's not. We just dyed our hair and wore makeup, and people said goth. You know what I mean? And we did it a lot earlier than some bands.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? But anyway, that doesn't matter. Clothes are great once they don't become uniforms. And the English press now, NME, they've got rave reviews there for the album. And I'm getting single of the week in the NME. I went, Jesus, what's
It's
going down?
interesting.
I don't care. They'll love you today and they'll hate you tomorrow. That's unimportant. Just use the bastards. I mean, if my vibe is, give me single of the week, great. Give me worst single of the week, great. I don't give a fuck. You can't, because they'll end up smashing you down. There's occasionally you meet good journalists who actually challenge you and talk and who actually have an interest, and that's great. And I actually did one or two interviews in the enemy, and they were great. They were good guys. But like for every one of those good guys, there's 10 assholes that are willing to hang you. And the editor sort of goes, oh, he's got 3 good reviews this year. Slash him next review. It's that weird over there. But they don't buy the records. They don't go to the shows.
Exactly.
So they're not important. The important people are the guys that come to the shows and buy the records.
That was going to be my next question, like, how do you see your relationship between you and your, I wouldn't want to use that word fans, but, people who really admire you, what you're doing?
I don't know. I mean, I'll talk to anyone. Basically, the only thing I want to do in music is like do something and hope that, like, when I was growing up and I heard music and I'd hear somebody singing or something and I'd sort of go, wow, I felt that, I've gone through that, and it gave me great courage that someone else is going through what I'm going through, or thinks or feels the way I feel, and that's all I want to do. I want to be able to say, is there people out there, for someone else out there to relate to the fact that, hey, Gavin's going through what I'm going through, or he sees things the way I see things, and it's just like music, away from anything aesthetic or intellectual. It's an element of you're not alone, which makes it really weird, but you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And that's all I want.
Do you think then, I was going to say, I think it's true though, do you think your listeners respond to you more on an emotional level than your average music fan does on what you're doing?
It's not really for me to say. I don't really know. Maybe. I find it's usually women and sensitive men that like my records. Macho men usually say, what? What are you on about? I need to fuck off, I find that. And I'm generalizing, okay. Like I haven't really, there are guys. But I usually find that, maybe, I don't really know, it's not for me to say. Some people might just like the look of it, I don't know. I don't really know. I talk to some guys.
How do you think people over here will react?
I think people will be a bit confused.
Do you think your older fans will, I think I see it from all my friends who were into your past work generally like the new album a great deal, but do you think most of your older fans will respond well to it?
Well, in England and Europe, the first time I started going out, a lot of Prunes fans, obvious Prune fans, just the way they looked, came along, and they were like, oh, he's changed, he's doing this, what's going on? And by the end, they got it. And it's pulling in different people. But I don't, I'm not, it's not the Virgin Prunes, it's me. So I don't really mind if people say, hey, I prefer the Virgin Prunes. Great. You know, that's your choice, you know. So I don't know, people here, it's up to them, it depends what they get at, what head level. An element of the manicness of the Virgin Prunes related to people. Maybe my stuff isn't as manic, although elements, depending on my mood, I can get out there. I don't really know what to expect at this country. I think they'll be a bit surprised or confused, not really knowing. Like people sometimes when I start playing, they didn't really know what to do. Do you clap? Do you look? What do you do? You know, because it's a bit like that. Because it's very intimate, and then it gets very aggressive, and then it gets very cynical and humorous, and then it gets intimate, and I keep going wah wah wah, all these pulling at emotions and head fuck. You know, but at the end, you know, I don't know. I'm really excited about coming here because I've never really thought about America. You know, the Prunes did this crazy little tour of the East Coast once and flew back to Europe. But since then I've been in America a bit more, and I sort of find America quite challenging to see kind of get in there and manipulate. And I don't know.
Well, I think it'll provoke a response just like the Prunes did, because very few people that I know here who like your work really ever got to see you play live. But the few who did on that tour that you're talking about really kind of spread the word. Because that's how actually I got interested in you, because my friend Massimo saw you, I think, in like 1983 at the Danceteria. And he had never heard you before, and he was just there, and he was blown away. And you know, a year later when I met him, he's like, you have to hear this band, Virgin Prunes, and he played for me, and I really liked it, and then I turned on my sister, and it kind of snowballs like that. I think, you know, I think your records, this record too, a lot of it would be word of mouth.
Oh yeah, when you see me, it makes more sense to a lot of people, and that's the big thing. So I don't know, I'm on my way. In 6 weeks, I'll be there. You know, I don't know. It's going great. I'm really happy. It's really hard, but we're working really hard.
One thing I was initially somewhat surprised that you got signed to Island, not because I don't think you're of the caliber or whatever, but just because usually labels won't take a chance on something as non-obviously modern sounding or
poppy or rocky.
Yeah, whatever, however you want to say that. Like, how did that come about? Like, you know, and how are they like making any kind of expectations of you? Or?
Well, it's really, I was quite lucky in that I was in New York and I had these tapes, and I was at this party, a really hip leg party, and when I have a few drinks on me, I'm a cocky fucker. I don't care who's there. I'll talk to anyone or I'll give anyone shit. And I had these tapes in my pocket, and I saw David Geffen, Seymour Stein, Chris Blackwell, all these big guys from record companies, and I went, hi, Gavin Friday, here's my tape, blah, blah, blah. I'm in town for a few days, give me a ring, blah, blah, blah. I did all this. And one of those guys was Chris Blackwell. I got a call the next day from Seymour Stein, from Sire. He says, yeah, I really like your stuff, it's great. But, you know, maybe it should be a bit more rhythmic here and there. And I said, no. I says, I know what I want. And he says, yeah, well, I really like your stuff. Give us a ring if you change your mind, blah, blah, blah. And Chris says, yeah, I like your stuff and you look interesting. Will you come up and meet me? And he's the main man. He's the big boss. And he came in and he just said, so, you have an interesting tape. I said, yeah. Do you find it interesting? And he started like, yeah, well, are you interested in music? What do you think? We started this row, arguing about music. I said, that's crap, this is great, that's shit. And it was like that, and we argued and talked for 3-4 hours. And he was like, he just said, look, I think I really like you. I like where you're coming from. You're your own man, you have your own ideas, you're strong. I want you to sign to Island Records. You can do what you want. And I was like blown away, because not many guys will. He let me make that record, but he knows that it's going to have to take a long term, you know. And he actually has the dignity not to worry if you don't sell 1,000,000 records. I mean, he's got sort of like Marion Faithfull, Tom Waits, and shit like that, and that doesn't sell millions, you know. It sells well, but it doesn't sell like, I mean, Tom Waits isn't bringing in millions, and he puts on very elaborate shows and things like that. But I actually think he believes in good music. So I was lucky to meet that guy.
Was that how you got hooked up with the guys from Tom Waits' band?
No, how I got up with the guys was through the producer,
Oh, Howell.
Hal Wilner. I met him and hung out with him, as I told you. It was great, and he knows all these people. He suggested 3 or 4 guys, and I knew some of them, and we came and we met them in New York, and I gave them tapes and lyrics, and I told them what the songs were about. And Rebo ended up, the guitar player, ended up being the guy that got the record. He was on the same level, and it worked out. I mean, I might work with him again, I mightn't, I don't really know. But it was through Hal's influence, because he sort of put together a lot of bands in New York, and he's a big sort of coordinator for albums and stuff.
Which song, like, to me the album, like the songs, certain songs stand out, but it's very much a whole. It's not like an album where there's definite singles, whatever. But are there particular? Is that, first of all, I guess, is that the way you look at it as a whole, and also are there particular songs that you mean more to you than others, or that you're particularly fond of?
I put the album together as a whole, but I see each song separate. We wrote each song separately, and I think you can take certain songs out of context and make it stand up. The whole thing means a lot to me on different levels. I mean, the most intimate song for me is Take Away the Sun, and He Got What He Wanted. The most personal song is another Blond, the Blues.
Those are my 2 favorites, I think. That You Wanted and Blond, the Blues. Yeah.
That's really
good songs.
That's really like intense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The vocals on that last song are really, you really build more than I've ever heard you build vocally before. You really seem to get, I don't know how you describe it, but you just, there's like a oomph.
I'm nearly dropped dead when I do that song. I just can't cope. It's just too, just on the floor dead, you know. Sometimes I just haven't got the energy to do it. But then again, like, each song I'm endeared to on different levels. Like, Man of Misfortune is me taking the piss out of myself. It's tongue-in-cheek. So is Rags to Riches, tongue-in-cheek.
What about the covers like that? You enjoy doing cover songs?
Yeah, I mean, there's 2 covers on the album, and the lyrics of the title track are by Oscar Wilde. We wrote the music. Yeah, well, those lyrics, each man cause the thing he loves, were like, you know, buzzing around in my head since I was a kid. Because when I was sort of like 12, 13, and I got into T-Rex and Bowie and early Roxy music, I got into Oscar Wilde as well. And those lyrics were as important to me as, you know, Electric Warrior or the first Roxy Music album or Ziggy Stardust. They were like that important. So that was something that I always, and those lyrics are so relevant to what we do today. And next was like, for me, I had to do a Jacques Brel song, because he really got me inspired to get going in music again. And that song is like, you know, it's brilliant. It's like a punk statement. It's like, I'm not going to stand in line. Don't tell me what to do. I'm not going to be next. You know, it's like I Want to Be Me from the Sex Pistols Part 2, except he wrote it nearly 30 years ago. You know, and then Death Is Not the End. That was like a weird song, because That was done. That was impromptu. I had this song. I was talking about either doing a cover version of "My Death," which is a Jacques Brel song, or I have this other song called "Dead," which I was working on. I didn't know whether to do that. I wanted to do something that dabbled in death. And I wasn't happy with the lyrics and the vibe of my song. It wasn't really together. I said, okay, Jacques Brel song, it's either Next or My Death. And Next went out hands because I needed that.
Right.
I wanted that aggression in there. And I was talking to Hal, and he says, yeah, well, maybe you should look out for a few other guys' songs. And he says, if you don't like the Jacques Brel one, you don't. And he says, hear this Dylan song. And I said, no. And he just gave me this demo he had of a Dylan tune. The lyrics blew me away. Just the lyrics. Hated the music. You know. And it's just like, when you're standing when you're lonely and you haven't got a friend. And I said, wow. I said, I'd love to bring it in. I wanted to make it sound like it was some sort of New Orleans funeral march meets some sort of nightmare. Seductive nightmare. And I love that now. It's so sort of, it's like breathing all this shit, you know. What was it? When we finished that, we were talking about the sound of it, and it's like the angel of death with our legs open. His death is not the end.
It's a great image.
You know what I mean? Because it's
Yeah.
so seductive, that track. And it doesn't sound anything like Bob Dylan, but when you do a cover version, I do enjoy doing cover versions. But they have to be me. I have to relate to them, and I make them mine. I don't think that sounds like a Bob Dylan tune.
No.
You know, but that's important. I mean,
I really liked your version of Lady Day. I was kind of disappointed that there wasn't a better, like a studio version.
Yeah, I love that. That's one of my favorite albums of all time, Berlin. It's a classic. Yeah, I mean, this talk. Maybe in about 2 or 3 albums' time, I'd love to do a cover versions album, just for fun.
My favorite band is T-Rex as well. So I was wondering if you'd ever do a Blond cover.
Yeah. What I plan to do is do songs of all my favorite songs that meant something when I was growing up, but bring them into different levels. Well, there's a song I'd probably do, but I'd love to bring T-Rex and bring them in with an orchestra and piano and violins, no electric instruments, and get Billie Holiday and turn her into do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Bring her there. Life's a Gas is probably the first song I'd record.
Oh, that would be great.
Do you know what I mean? That song. That's my favourite T-Rex album, The Slider and Electric Warrior. But he was so brilliant. He was just a genius, you know. He was more true than even Bowie was, more honest. Bowie was too much of a comedian. You know, he had these great moments, Bowie, but what he's doing now is so upsetting.
Oh.
It's disgusting.
Yeah.
What he's done for the last fucking 10 years is disgusting, you know. But anyway, Bolan would be one of the first guys. He's one of the big heroes.
Because there's something about him too where he was able to really communicate feeling in music.
It's so sensitive. He was so sensitive, and a lot of people said his lyrics are bullshit. They weren't. They were like little mystical poems. He was wonderful. I freaked out when he died. I remember the day exactly. I freaked out, you know. If I had money, I would have gone to the funeral and all that shit. He was a big thing. He was like the first thing I related to when I was 12. Just turned on the TV and see this guy, you know, I went, Jesus. You know what I mean? It just hit me. Great.
Was that something, I know people asked you about this a million times, but I was just curious if that had any bearing on I don't know, one thing I always found interesting about you is the way you were able to kind of confound people's ideas of what a man should look like or act like, and yet not be necessarily gay or something. You know what I mean?
Well, it always pissed me off that people categorize sexuality, and there's elements in many men and many women that are feminine and masculine, and at the end of the day, it doesn't matter a fuck what your preferences are. But what is important is people and beauty in people. And I was sort of like come from a very cliched Catholic background, where men are men, and in Ireland there are only men and women. And I was beat the fuck out of me when I went to school because I decided to look like Mark Bolan when I was 12 and grew my hair and wanted to wear stars in my eyes. And I soon learned that you don't do that in school because everyone calls you a fag, even when you don't know what a fucking fag is because you're too young. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And when I got 16, I said, hey baby, you fucked me around enough about telling me what my sexuality is. My sexuality is my business, and I'm going to tell you, fuck you. So I believed we weren't gender benders, we were gender fucks. We were like, seriously, I was telling people, don't categorize. And when I wore a skirt, I didn't wear it like a woman, I wore it like a man.
Exactly.
And I had Doc Martens, and if anyone give me shit, they get it. Even though I can't fight. You know what I mean?
No, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. And that's it, you know, what the fuck do people have these problems with people for? You know, we're all influenced by so many different things. I don't know how to fight. I'm not a physical guy. Mentally, I'm very physical. I could eat the face off somebody if they start hassling me. You know, but I can't fight. I'm not aggressive that way. And I think what is manly is a lot more than muscle and brawn.
I agree totally. I found what you did very liberating when I was 4 or 5 years ago, when I was younger and I was still going to college. Just because I found it something where, you know, I just, like how you talk about beauty, like to me, wearing makeup, let's say, or something like that, or just, you know, wearing your clothes a certain way isn't masculine or feminine, it's just beautiful. And I liked doing that. And I did that even though somebody would say something about it. I don't know if I'm explaining this right,
no, you
but
are.
I found what you did very liberating, and I found it in something that helped me do that and say, well, I'm going to do that, and I don't care what anybody thinks. You know, and it turns out women don't have as much problem with it as men do. My wife likes that.
Well, women, you know, my girlfriend, my mother made my dresses, and then my girlfriend makes my dresses. And my girlfriend, like, you know, if I decide, I dress what I feel. If I feel like really up and out there, and I say, yeah, I'm going out there. Oh no, I'm gonna fuck them up. So out goes the eyeliner, and out comes this, you know. Yeah. And like, I dress for what I feel like, you know. I deliberately wouldn't wear dresses at the moment because I felt like after the prunes, that statement became too much of a cliche. Yeah. It became like, it actually became a Boy George-ism on an alternative way. But one day when everyone has everything for granted, I'm just gonna whip it out and fuck them up when they say, Gavin's cool, he's cool out there, you know, he's a good guy. You know, hopefully when it's out, you know, I just know I'm a sort of a pesty bastard. If I ever got a chance of a single that went into the top 20, I'd probably appear on top of the pops in a skirt and probably go down the charts again, you know what I mean? But I don't care about that. I just like upsetting people when not upsetting them for the sake of it, but when they put it in a little box. There you are that. Don't do that to me, I'll turn the card around. You know what I mean? Well, clothes I love, but I dress up or I dress down, I do what I want. But I just think that in certain elements, I find it so sad sometimes when you look at goths and kids and cure heads, whatever you want to call them. And I'm walking around Dublin and London and I'm seeing hundreds of them